on Saturday, putting in the late changes and trying to get some revised projections out while hosting this show solo by myself. We have 9 games, which I will... it's been a while since I've been able to just blur through everything as fast as I can, so what we are going to do is just... I will bang out everything I can about these 18 teams off the top of my head. Chat starting in about 3 minutes. That'll run us about 15 minutes, and then leading up to lock, I'm going to take about 30 minutes of hard questions from you guys, hoping that those lead to any points of interesting contention that I might have missed during my original questionary, if you will. And then hopefully as we get closer towards lock, if any news breaks, we can immediately talk about that and try to make something sexy happen off of that news. Yesterday was pretty good. Got some nice screenshots. Obviously, the Rockets disappointed collectively as a team, not showing a whole hell of a lot. They were actually favored in that game, and that certainly didn't turn out to be a smart call on the part of Vegas there. Let's see if our tweet has gone out so that we can retweet that aforementioned tweet for the Twitter. I don't see it. Yet again, I will assume we are live on the air. Someone who can hear me, please tweet the show at me so I can retweet the show for all the other people looking at the show. Because for some reason, one of my estimable colleagues set up the retweet through the Twitter machine today, and it did not fire as expected, so it didn't tag me. So someone who can, link the show back to me so I can then... retweet your tweet. So I'm going to take a minute here and finish up my latest version of these rankings and then publish them, and then we will burn through some games in fast order. Again, what I'm working on here is the rankings I put out every day, giving a letter grade of everyone for cash and GPP. It also, I curate it down to a player pool. Basically, everyone on this list is someone I would have in a large player pool if I was running, say, 150 lineups out there, and then you can use this and sort by the letter grades to get some decent idea of the exposure that I would have in tournaments, and you end up with, if you want to throw out 150 lineups with the minimum amount of time invested, this is certainly one fairly quick way to do so. So I am just burning through, reformatting for the last time, taking that late news, looking now to see if any of you fine people are nice enough to tweet the show at me. There it is. Like it. Retweet it. All right. Thank you, Roger Schelling at MTXRMS, and the couple other people who now it's coming in. Quite a number of people are so kind as to obey my request there. So let's. I will do the game burn real quick, and then I will go ahead and see if there's any late news. So we will have later rankings than I like to have, but something has to sit behind. So 6 teams on a back-to-back tonight. You have Charlotte, Chicago, Milwaukee, and the Pelicans on the back end of a back-to-back. Some people prefer it on the back end. They played last night. Tomorrow night, the Suns and Utah play again. So something to keep in mind when discussing players from those teams. And again, when looking at, thank you for the 21 people who just retweeted the show to me. Ask and you shall receive. It is worth looking at the minutes on some of these teams. Charlotte, Chicago, and Milwaukee were all involved in fairly massive blowouts last night. So when we look at those 4 teams on the back-to-back, those 3, especially early in the season, especially when a lot of their starters got 20, 23, 25 minutes, shouldn't be super concerned with those guys. The Pelicans actually had a little bit of trouble handling their business against the Nets of Brooklyn. So let's go ahead and just dive right in here and get started. Let's start with our 2 7 p.m. games. So and I want to make sure that my timing on this is right, because I have Utah and the Pellies down as a 7 o'clock game, which I believe it is. I think it is a 6 local time game, which is a little curious, but I'm just double checking. Okay, it was correct in my notes. I wanted to make sure I didn't somehow mess that up, because you don't usually get Utah and the Pelicans going off at lock. But that's nice when you have a certain Anthony Davis questionable with an elbow injury. Obviously, this is all kinds of interesting and something you should be looking at. Now, so this starts right at lock. Obviously, if Anthony Davis is in and you get Anthony Davis at a reduced ownership, certainly someone you should be interested in. In general, especially when you're talking about something like a bad elbow, I'm a big fan of playing guys who are questionable. It just dilutes their ownership and very rarely dilutes their performance. Proportionately, you would do better if all your guys were listed questionable than if not, because only one guy out of 40 is affected by the questionable tag, and much more benefit is gained from that by their reduced ownership. There's some big pricing disparity on the two sites between these two guys. Anthony Davis is $1,900 more on FanDuel. That makes it sticky, but there is a lot of value, and there is a massive upside here. Obviously, the matchup with the Jazz, not something we're looking forward to, especially as the team goes on, or as the year goes on. This is a team that we expect to have a pretty dominating defense. They played a few up-pace games at the beginning of the year. That's resulting of, playing teams like Sacramento. That's going to come down and down and down till their pace ends in the bottom four or so, and their defense will end probably at number one. But it's still Anthony Davis, and especially if you're talking about Anthony Davis at a reduced ownership, that's someone I would have a lot of interest in. Now, just raw points, if everyone's 100% healthy, I actually project him for less than Giannis today, which is pretty rare for me. I tend to be a brow over Giannis guy when they're playing concurrently, but Giannis's matchup is very, very sweet. And Anthony Davis is quite simply is not. That being said, there is an upside to be achieved here, to be sure. The last time he actually suited up against the Jazz, he had a triple-double, and he did it Hassan Whiteside style with the blocks. He had 25, 11, and 10, along with 3 steals and 3 assists. So it's not like he can't get there. 13 steals and blocks will do a lot of good for you. Now, in this matchup, he tends to average about 4, and it isn't one that normally produces one, so I state that only to point out that an upside is obvious. I've heard a number of people talking about the situation and been like, look, if, even if he's out, normally I'd like to try to get a piece of that. If he's, comes in late, we get that news late, but against the Jazz, it's not worth it for me. Still Anthony Davis. If he's in the mood to get 90 against the Jazz, he absolutely can do that. So I do think that is something that's worth looking at. And again, the value of that increases the closer to lock we get till we get Anthony Davis news. So if we get news in 3 minutes at 6:22 that Anthony Davis will play and start, it's going to play pretty close to a normal situation. If we get news at 6:51 that Anthony Davis will play and start, it would suddenly become a very strong play to get him in there. So if you're sitting at your computer right now, having an Anthony Davis plan is not a bad idea. There were already some people based on the matchup, especially on DraftKings, priced way to the hell cheap for this matchup. Alfred Payton is $6,400. That's good. Drew Holiday is $6,500. That's very good. I do prefer Drew to Elf in this matchup based on the way I expect the Jazz to align their defense. We have a fair amount of evidence from last year, a lot to do by myself, so I'm not going to go into game logs and tape watching that I did earlier today, but these two teams did play twice in the spring after Boogie Cousins went out with similar lineups, and we have a decent idea of what to look at here, and Drew is certainly one of the guys I would be interested based on watching that. And him getting probably the easiest defensive assignment here. So, playing Drew, or Elf, who is still underpriced at $6,400 and can certainly get there, is nice because you don't need to pivot off of them in the event that Anthony Davis is all of a sudden in, and you're obviously holding the upside of Anthony Davis is out, and now everybody else has to do more. Etuan Moore is no better than Etuan Moore usually is. He does end up seeing a little bit of Joe Ingles here, although they'll switch him over and he'll spend a fair amount of time. They're going to swap it around a lot. Crowder will be in there. You'll have Ingles sit on Mirotic for a while. Julius Randle is questionable again. He's a very interesting play on DraftKings where he's only $5,900. He's probable, actually. He's got plantar fasciitis in one foot, which he's been playing through, which I presume he will be in, but again, we'll be looking for news on that. But that price on DraftKings of $5,900 is pretty stellar for a GPP, even considering the upside of Anthony Davis is out, and now everyone has to play more time. I don't think I'm interested in packing in some Check Diallo. Can I talk value next? I will probably talk value and talk about all these guys as we go through the game, and then specifically discuss it at length and handle it question style, but there's only time for so many things. So, Mirotic is priced very highly, and you're hoping for super shooting game, and this isn't the best matchup for him. So, Mirotic, if Anthony Davis is in, isn't a guy I'm looking to target on a big slate with a lot of guys who are simply underpriced. He's priced fairly or even a little poorly for a matchup with the Jazz. So, again, probably a guy who's going to carry a shit ton of water in the event that Anthony Davis is out, so feel free to have him Mirotic as part of your Anthony Davis plan, but not necessarily someone I'm wanting to windmill in there, especially on DraftKings. I'm just going to lower my volume here a little bit because those noises are getting a little egregious. Take your time, computer. I know I got you doing a lot here, but if I could lower my... we're going old school. I'm rotating the dial on the speakers. Old school. AD out. Okay, those messages are coming in. I don't have that from any of my sources yet, but I'm assuming people... Anthony Davis ruled out. Look, that came in just on time. Okay, well... first of all, nice job, Universe, landing that so I don't have to come back to this game. Okay, so AD is out. On DraftKings, you now have a pretty stellar amount of interest in Elfrid Payton or Drew Holiday. You can absolutely play them both. If I have to play one, I have to play Drew Holiday, but there are two stellar plays with him out. But Drew, an exceptional play, $6,500. Yeah, I'd want some pretty big exposure there. Be aware that he's going to be super chalky, but he would be the number one guy in this team. I'm looking at Mirotic at 78 on FanDuel, now very much in play, going to take himself some 20-odd shots. 7,300 on DK, very much in play due to the massive discount. I would prefer Julius Randle. I don't think this is a situation all of a sudden you want to play 5 Pelicans. I do think stacking this game is very interesting. Getting Anthony Davis out there, out of there, makes Jazz players who are already going to be significantly under-owned well more attractive here. So let's finish by talking about what we're going to do with the Pelicans first, and then we'll pivot. So Drew Holiday, both sites I prefer at price. He's $100 more on DK, $200 more on FanDuel. Etuan Moore now makes much more compelling value on DraftKings, where he's going to maybe pick up a minute or two, but more importantly, pick up some number of shots. Anthony Davis obviously takes a lot of shots for this team. So getting a piece or two of this, Etuan Moore at 4,200, pretty decent play, probably in playing cash for me, and certainly in playing tournaments at $4,200. Beyond that, yeah, Randall in play both sites, certainly stronger on the DraftKings there. I don't think I necessarily want to be running off shots of Ian Clark or Jackson or Solomon Hill. Do we have Darius Miller status? If somebody gets that, go ahead and send me a message with Darius Miller status, because I do not believe that has yet been confirmed. If it has, I have missed it. Talking about the Jazz, this may pick up their ownership a little bit, but they were going to be under-owned because they're in sticky price spots. Gobert now becomes an interesting pivot at an absolutely massive center position tonight. There are just 100 good center plays. So, yeah, Rudy Gobert, please attempt to, get yourself some in any large field number of tournaments. This matchup gets pretty stellar for him. Now with the pace and everything else going on there, Jay Crowder becomes even better. He was already one of the better priced sort of mid-range plays with real upside. Again, it cannot be overstated the effect of the Pelicans' massive pace is going to have here. So Jay Crowder, especially on FanDuel, where he's priced especially well. Ingles, again, priced a little too cheap on FanDuel, and now I'm much more comfortable putting into play guys like Ricky Rubio and Donovan Mitchell. Ricky Rubio hasn't gotten there yet this year, but against the Pelicans without Anthony Davis is the best spot you're going to find. So 57 and 54 for Rubes. Either one. Darius Miller out. Thank you for the update. So yeah, that's even more exciting. That's more minutes for Etuan Moore. I'm a pretty big fan of Etuan Moore now at 47, 42. But yeah, Rubio, strong tournament play. Donovan Mitchell, again, still not a price I'm super excited about, but he's been waiting to bust out, and now I think is his opportunity to clearly do so. So yeah, you can now play Derek Favors, who previously would have been out of play. So those big 6 Jazz, strong plays for me. I like mini stacking this game where guys are priced especially well, especially over on DraftKings. So yeah, Gobert, sure. Ingles, like significantly now. Derek Favors now enters play. Donovan Mitchell is going to be under-owned because no one wants to pay $8,200 his price with all the other discounted guys, and Ricky Rubio now a pretty strong tournament play. We will come back to this game later, I am sure, in the form of several questions. Let's move on to a much less exciting basketball game between the Pistons and the Celtics. So the first name to talk about here is Andre Drummond. Andre Drummond has generally drank the Celtics, and more specifically Al Horford's milkshake, for some number of years. whether or not Horford was playing and starting at center Atlanta. Now, the last couple games sort of bucked that trend a little bit. Running into the end of last year, we were talking about, Jesus Christ, Andre Drummond playing Al Horford, and got a little disappointing at the end because Brad Stevens, clever little elf-like man that he is, figured out that, hey, I can start Aaron Baines out there and just body up a little bit and stop this guy from completely eating my lunch. So the last couple games, you had a Drummond game where he got in a little foul trouble and had 6, 15, and 1. That's a terrible game. The last game he had 15, 17, and 3. That's not too bad. That's in the low 40s, depending where you're playing. But the games previous to that we're referring to, my personal favorite was 26 points, 22 rebounds, 6 assists, and 4 steals. That's pretty good, but I'm not skipping any here. 17, 15, and 2 steals. 28 and 22, 3 assists, 2 steals, 3 blocks. 20 and 17, 2, and 1. 20 and 17, 19 and 17 and 2, 18 and 18 and 1, 25 and 12, 2, 1 and 3, 18 and 19, 3, 1 and 2, 22 and 13, 1, 2 and 1. Which is really funny. There was a string where 6 out of 7 times playing this team, he had exactly 36 or 7 combined points and rebounds. That sort of speaks for itself. Now, again, 2 things I want to add here are, one, center is absolutely gassed with Nurkic and Whiteside and McGee and other guys I'll remember as we go through the games, who are cheaper and really do have similar upsides, so that sort of makes this suck. But should Andre Drummond price into your lineups, especially with Aaron Baines no longer participating in this evening's festivities, certainly a reasonable guy to throw a bullet out. Sans Baines, I have still some decent interest in Marcus Morris as a value play at 4,500. His minutes are going to perk up a little bit there. Beyond that, Kyrie Irving, it's a big slate, so I'm sure he's going to get off the schneid someday. Pace is an exciting matchup with Reggie Jackson is. If I'm playing 150 lineups, I have 4 Kyrie Irving in there. Jaylen Brown has gotten really cheap, but that's because he's been really terrible. I somehow doubt this is the spot where he suddenly picks it up. Gordon Hayward's price is coming down. Same sort of thing. Don't think I'm terribly inclined towards it, but 1 or 2 in 150. Jason Tatum's price is still up. Not the best matchup for him, but has shown he can really command the usage. 5 or 10 in 150. Al Horford has had a couple bounce back, fight back games in this situation where he did not have his milkshake drank without putting up a fight. Again, like 5 or 10 out of 150. Not a game we're super looking to target other than Drummond. I'm playing Drummond over Blake, and center's already stacked, so you can play Blake at forward, so it would probably end up nearly identically exposed to the 2 of them for that reason. Blake still carries an upside. Not a lot of people are going to want to pay that price tonight. We have 1 game intervening his 80-point game. Not a matchup where you're likely to see 80 again. Reggie Jackson at 5,500 on DK, cheap enough that I think you can do it. I don't think I'm going to mess around with Bullock or Stanley Johnson in this situation. You can still punt Ish Smith because there's still all the evidence in the world, especially DK where he's 4,600. He's sort of a very reasonable cash play. I would probably rather play Darren Collison for a similar projection and a little more upside. A couple other guys I would rather look at, but could certainly be in your player pool, and I wouldn't hate it. But a bit cashy for my taste. Let's go ahead and go on to one of the premier games of the evening. Atlanta and Chicago. Let's start by talking about the Bulls. Cameron Payne prices continued to increase. Not a bad fantasy basketball player. Really good fade for the team earlier this year. But again, this game over-under in the low to mid 230s. No one here really interested in playing defense that much. The Hawks have been better than I expect, but I don't think that sticks together. They have a couple decent wing defenders. They've had a couple good matchups. I think they fall into the bottom half in defense as opposed to their currently, in my opinion, way too high defensive ranking. But that's going to continue to slide. And even if it doesn't, they're playing at around the fastest of the fastest pace in the NBA right now. So this is all sorts of a fantasy gold mine. Again, when you're talking about the Bulls, they are on the back-to-back, but they, as is their want. And as yesterday, I made 2 projections on the Chicago game. One was I thought Kemba could go for up to 60, and the second was that I thought the Bulls were going to get absolutely destroyed by the Hornets, and the second one happened, which sort of precluded the first one, but you still got a solid 50 burger out of Kemba there. Zach LaVine, again, still, this is a stellar matchup, and a bit cashy because it's hard for him to hit the super upside of guys like Oladipo with Tyreek Evans out and guys who can contribute more across the board. So if you're going to get, 60 fantasy points off Zach LaVine, it's going to be 44 real points, but there's no reason that can't happen here. So 84 and 79. Feel free to look at that guy. Justin Holiday, especially the DK price of 4,500, perfectly reasonable. Just a volume guy hoping to get in there. I don't think I'm playing Chandler Hutchinson. I haven't seen enough, but he's 34, 3,500. More of a cash punt for me, but if you make sure your final line, that is fine. Wendell Carter, 5,600 on FanDuel. No thanks, 4,300 on DK. Yeah, I do think he gets on top of that at some point. He's giving you 20, 21 every game, which does not bury you under the earth at $4,300, but there is a real chance that he, actually shoots well and gets some extra time. And again, he only played, I want to say 18 or 20 minutes last night. So you may get 30 minutes out of him. And in this matchup, you could randomly get 40 points. I would probably be pretty significantly exposed to Wendell Carter. Wasn't on Jabari last night at better prices. Again, the matchup is there. Anytime you're looking at a guy who's going to take, 22 shots in a matchup this juicy. Your rankings haven't been updated. I will look at them again in a second, but it's annoying. Jabari Parker, you can certainly gas up anywhere you want in tournaments. I still generally think I'm a little under the field, which is where I was yesterday. But the upside certainly is present. Looking over at the Hawks, I miss opening day $5,300 Trae Young. Matchup is just superlative. On DK, I would probably rather play Kent Bazemore to Trae Young, as he has just the absolute nutty matchup, and the price is much smaller. Kent Bazemore, you'd have to really want it on FanDuel, especially where you kind of have to play DeMar DeRozan at shooting guard. We'll get there in a minute, though, but Trae Young in play absolutely everywhere. I would project for very near 40, if not north of 40 tonight. You're probably looking at 25 points and 10 assists roughly. Great spot for him. Taurean Prince still going to go perennially under-owned, very much in play both sites. Has lost time to blowouts and foul trouble and all sorts of other things. I think he will generally play in the 30s and should be pretty dominant. Center, we don't know exactly what's going to happen. Dwayne Dedmon makes sort of an interesting play on FanDuel at 4,400 where you can play, 20 minutes and do something really significant in a pretty stud matchup. But again, he's playing center. You only get one on FanDuel. I don't want any of that jazz. Alex Len, again, we think the minutes are going to probably decrease. And again, center, tough spot. DeAndre Bembry, you could put in a tournament lineup. I guess at this point we have to prefer him over Kevin Huerter, but not something I am super confident in playing any of those guys. Let's go ahead and move on to the Hornets and the 76ers. The aforementioned Kemba Walker naturally got a price drop on DK because reasons. 8,000 too good. He got me 50 last night where I was all over him and played 26 minutes, 23 minutes. I don't know, but not enough minutes that we think it should significantly impact his upside tonight. There's, potential blowout. That's a bit of a concern. But at 8,000 with him running around getting roughly 35% usage every game, really hard to not still like Kemba Walker on DK where he's underpriced, and you can certainly play him on FanDuel where he's 8,700. As always, everyone else on this team is a little squirrely. Nick Batum is still 5,300 on DraftKings. That's way the hell too cheap. Has had a couple games of like 35 this year and a couple games that are kind of shit. Certainly someone you can run out there if you're stacking this game. Certainly the sides I would be looking to take on the DraftKings would be Kemba and Batum. Play ABC on FanDuel and punt Decker or balance with Mirotic and Slow-Mo. Slow-Mo's that much on FanDuel? Slow-Mo should only be like $600 more on FanDuel. So I'm a little confused by that question because something there didn't make any sense. Because you're spending $600 more on Slow-Mo and saving like $5,000 going from Giannis to Mirotic. So something there didn't add up to me unless I misread the question as it flew through. But again, I want to finish burning through the games and then we'll handle questions starting again, of course, in the premium chat. Looking across the other side of the ball, to my knowledge, hold on, let's tweet decks, updates, Hornets starting who we thought they would. Randall will start, so yes, that stays exactly where we were. Pelly starting who we thought they were. Jazz starting who we thought they were. Kyle Anderson will start again, who I really, really like. You can feel free to get some Kyle Anderson in there. He's going to, in that matchup, he should be good for, I'll go 20 to 30 minutes and conservatively, 26 fantasy points, and he's 4K, and there is an upside beyond that. So Slow-Mo is certainly someone we are interested in taking a look at. Apologies, gotta do. Okay. All right, so let's get back at that. Make sure I didn't miss anyone here. Again, talking about the 76ers. We do not have views on Joel Embiid yet, which we hopefully will get by lock. This is a 7:30 game. Simmons is marginally better without Joel Embiid. The whole offense gets a little bit shiftier. He isn't a guy who scores so many of his points from shooting, so the absence of one guy versus another guy doesn't do a ton for him. The first guy I would look at in the instance that Embiid it out is Saric. Saric gets extra time, gets extra usage, gets extra points, gets extra rebounds, gets extra everything. 6,000, 5,500 if we get news that Joel Embiid is out. Dario Saric, the first guy I want to look at. Fultz and Covington, both $600-700 cheaper on DraftKings. Both very exciting tournament plays in a game with infinite pace. Both pick up some usage in the absence of my favorite Cameroonian in the NBA. JJ Redick just fine to play regardless. I like JJ Redick a lot today. 5,500, 5,600, absolutely runnable out there right now. And in the event Embiid is out, you feel a little bit better about him. We've frequently seen him being one of the guys who just picks up all the extra shots there. I don't think I really want a Mike Muscala. I don't really want a TJ McConnell, but he's cheap. He's in the 3s somewhere, I think, so that's something you could do. And Ben Simmons just is on his face a very strong play, regardless of the status of Embiid in a super, super fast game, especially on DK, a few $100s cheaper, and seems fairly likely to put up a triple-double in those situations. Like, his triple-double chance is like 40% in this game. It's really significant, so kind of hard to look past that. And lastly, a guy you should consider from this game is Joel Embiid. In the event Joel Embiid does not play, 10,400 on DK, 11-1 on FanDuel. FanDuel much tougher. And again, center pretty gacked. It's tough when you're looking at possibly getting, 50 out of Whiteside and 40 out of Nurkic and 55 out of Drummond to want to spend up a couple grand to get to Embiid. But 2% Joel Embiid is the best Joel Embiid. Let's continue on to another game before we get into the questions. I'm lost in my notes. Let's do the Pacers and the Cavs. Kevin Love will not play. The Cavs will do something. I'm really not sure the hell what. So, hold on the questions. I will, again, and I will start in the Slack, in the premium Slack. You guys will go first, but let me finish this. If I bounce back and forth, we lose 10 seconds every time I transition. So, not sure what they're going to do. A lot of people are like, oh, Kevin Love's out again. Let's play Larry Nance again. That had really nothing to do with Kevin Love being out last game. He didn't play a second next to Tristan Thompson. They shared the center minutes. Now, the second unit played much better than the first unit. The only guy among the starters who was doing well was George Hill, excepting that the rest of them were shit. So all the bench played extra minutes, basically. But again, I would predict you probably get Tristan Thompson here again. Not necessarily, because Tristan Thompson not the best guy at guarding, say, Miles Turner. So maybe Larry Nance gets the start. If we've had that news, I missed it so far. But again, I'm doing 6 things at once right now. If he gets the start, I'm pretty confident. If he doesn't, I'm a little more inclined towards the fade. Price at 5,000 or higher on every site right now. And again, people got lucky last game. When they announced that Channing Frye was going to get the start, the most likely scenario was Larry Nance was going to come off the bench and get 20 minutes, and he randomly got 30 and crushed. Not a bad play simply because he is a good fantasy basketball player. The rest of that, I don't know what the hell they're going to do with this team. Maybe the kids play more again. Maybe the starters get more run if this game somehow stays close, which doesn't seem very likely. Rodney Hood at 41 and 43, a guy I would have interest in tournaments. Chetty on DK where he's 54, someone you could certainly run out there again. Colin Sexton in the 3s, looked better last game than he has before. Fine to play in a tournament. I'd rather play Hood than Clarkson where he's strictly cheaper. Don't really want to play Tristan Thompson in a game that doesn't play to his strengths. George Hill burned me last time simply because the minutes look really good. Certainly something you can do again in tournaments, but not certainly tough to know what to do on the Cavs and a massive slate and a lot of other plays we like, and not a great matchup against a defensively potent Pacer team. On the Pacers, I like Darren Collison a lot. I like Collison and Kojo and Oladipo a lot once you remove Tyreek Evans from the equation, who is a naughty boy. Tyreek Evans not going to play tonight, and again, all three of those guys just suffered based on the fact that they ended up sharing usage, sharing guard duties sort of with Tyreek Evans there. So Darren Collison at 43, yeah, I think his minutes now kick back up and his usage kicks back up a few points. And the matchup's pretty solid. So Darren Collison, 4,300, cash punt, tournament punt, no issue with that. Oladipo, 83 and 77, very much in play. If this game somehow stays close, which is possible, he could put up a massive number, and having Tyreek out of there is really significant for me. Has had trouble getting there this season with Tyreek in there. Again, Kojo off the bench, DK, one of the prices are like 500 cheaper, use that one. Bojan, not Bogdan Bogdanovic, at the 3. Priced in the mid-4s. His minutes will come up a few because Tyreek was spending some of his time in 3-guard lineups at the 3. Certainly someone you can do in tournaments in a stellar matchup there. The Deuce Young has tried to deuce on Kevin Love a number of times. Kevin Love being out actually makes me like him a little bit less. Pretty stellar matchup for him. You could play Miles Turner in a tournament on FanDuel, especially where he's even more underpriced. But again, center, pretty gassed tonight. Sabonis, again, tough to spend $6K there, where you can spend a few hundred more and get a guy like Nurkic or Whiteside. Let's move on to the next game without so much uncertainty. Let's go ahead and look at Portland and Miami. A couple targets of opportunity here, but not anything thrilling. Lillard has had blow-up games against the Heat and against Dragic in the past in real shit games. So high variance for him. If you looked at his game logs against the Heat, you'd see like 40 points and 12 assists and some stuff, and then like 18 points and 7 assists, and then 35 points, and like has had blow-up spots against Miami in the past. They are getting back some of their better defensive players who have been absent. That takes the shine off for me a little bit. Sort of an ownership play. Never really going to be a day when Lillard is not in play, but not a spot we're particularly looking at. McCollum is still a little bit underpriced. 6,200 on DK. Hashtag analysis is only slightly worse than 6,100 on DK. Feel free to do that. Don't play Jake Layman. I wouldn't play Al-Farouq Aminu tonight. Is it worth it, Yusuf Nurkic? It certainly could be worth it. I like Whiteside a little bit better at similar prices. He has looked better in this matchup, but due to the presence of Whiteside, you definitely see Nurk probably getting more minutes like we did against Vooch, for example, recently. With Nurkic, just like, say, Valanciunas, minutes is really the bugaboo. So he very much in play, and there is a very big upside there. Again, against a Miami defense that I kind of like. I'm not playing more than one of Lillard, McCollum, and Nurkic. But they all deserve some attention if I'm looking over at the bench. Evan Turner is the only guy I'd look at. He's still under 4K on DK. Running that second unit does some pretty good things for you. Goran Dragic, tournament exposure on DK is under 6K, makes some sense. FanDuel 6,300 isn't too bad. The real bugaboo with this team is we expect them to be getting Justice Winslow back, who was going to play in the last game and got scratched right at the beginning of the game. Wayne Ellington back, who hasn't played in a few games. Derek Jones Jr. is going to be back, and with the batch of all these new guys, I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen with the minutes. I have a projected rotation, but basically everyone's minutes comes down, so not really excited about Goran Dragic. Really takes the shine off Josh Richardson, really takes the shine off Rodney McGruder, who's, when he was 3,500 was pretty stellar. Now he's over 5K on both sides. I'm not playing Kelly Olynyk. Whiteside is the one guy, again, I think has a lot of merit here. I don't think we can play Justice Winslow yet till he gets some significant minutes under his bench. The minutes get all derfed for guys like Dwayne Wade and Johnson. So, screw that noise. Let's go ahead and move on to the other 8 p.m. game. The Suns and the Grizzlies. Josh Jackson's going to be super chalk on FanDuel, where he's $4,000. He'll be starting as the shooting guard. You should naturally look for him under the power forward position, where he has played some, so it's not completely ridiculous, but it's just kind of funny on its face. Don't play Isaiah Cannon. It's just not going to be worth it very frequently. The matchup is pretty ugly, and there's just better places you can go for value. You can run Josh Jackson on DK, where he's $5,000. I don't hate playing Trevor Ariza on either side. I think the minutes do have to come up here. He's a little cheaper, and he should be on FanDuel, or he's well cheaper than DK, someone you can look at. Don't play Ryan Anderson. We're not sure if he can even see in all the colors of the spectrum. DeAndre Ayton, yet another stellar center play, but Marc Gasol, not a matchup we're looking at, but encouraging to see DeAndre Ayton playing in blowout time. TJ Warren very much in play in the mid-5s on both sides. That's everyone I would think of playing on the Suns. When we're talking about the Grizzlies here, again, still no JaMychal Green because he got his jaw broke, prison style. Chandler Parsons is out as well. We think everyone else will be on hand here. Mike Conley, the price has come up, but the matchup is obviously very nice. Mid to high 7s. certainly some Mike Conley would just have to be tournaments. There's guys who are just priced better, but obviously can smash the universe if this game stays close. If I had to play one of the wings, it would be Kyle Anderson for me. Still just 4,100 on FanDuel. The matchup doesn't get any better, and he's going to break out one of these days. I think today will be the day. So I like him a lot on FanDuel. You can pair him with Giannis, for example. Jaren Jackson is still in there and starting because, again, JaMychal Green in the film room. It was terrible. You don't want to hear about it. Jaren Jackson, all the upside in the world, can do threes, which this team will let you do, and get blocks, which this team loves to let you do. So, yeah, Jaren Jackson, even at the no longer the 5,500 price, I think he's 6 on FanDuel. No, he's 6 on DK, 65 on FanDuel. Like him absolutely more in tournaments. Again, Marc Gasol is a center. You can play Marc Gasol, but you're wagering on this game staying close. And again, looking at all these sort of wing value guys, it's probably Kyle Anderson, then Garrett Temple for me. If I had to go to a third one, it'd be, I guess, super value Shelvin back, but everyone else's minutes are getting pretty durfed. Moving on, we have 2 games left, I think, both 8:30 games. That's pretty exciting. How about being able to do my wrap-up Periscope at 11 instead of 1:30 in the morning? I'm excited. Let's talk about the better one first so you have more time to pivot. I'm that kind of considerate host. Lakers and the Spurs. These 2 teams already played once this year, and everybody was good. And it feels weird when you say that because usually that's an exaggeration. But no, everyone was good. Do I have this game log handy? I don't have this game log handy. Everyone was good but KCP. Like, there were 10 starters, and everyone was good. So whatever value we're looking for, everyone was fine or better. Like, Rudy Gay had 30. That wasn't that exciting at like 5,500. But DeMar DeRozan, LeBron James, and LaMarcus Aldridge all had over 60. Bryn Forbes hit his value at 25. It was just generally a smash spot. I think that's a little bit exceptional. So probably won't be that good, but definitely a spot we should have some interest in. Another game with the over-under of 230. Lonzo Ball, especially DK, has a very fantasy-friendly game. 6K certainly could randomly pull his first triple-double of the year here. Josh Hart, again, another guy, both $1,200 cheaper on DK than FanDuel. LeBron James, I prefer Giannis Antetokounmpo, but it's LeBron James in a fast game. You don't have to necessarily overthink that one. I'm seeing a lot of messages come in, so I'll just click on my news tab. DeAndre Ayton will play. Useful information. JaVale McGee, just way still to pull your head out of your ass. Cheap on DK, who gets stuck on whether or not some really interesting things in their metric there. But yeah, 5,600 on DK, one of, 5 or 6 really stellar center plays on DraftKings. Had 30 to 35 the first time out here. Just as, when he's playing 30, 32 minutes, is a great fantasy basketball player. So JaVale McGee, certainly a player you can have all the exposure in the world you want. Kyle Kuzma at 7K is fairly priced, but, in 150, I'd have about 10 copies of that. Off the bench there, we're still minus Ingram, so I don't think necessarily that's a spot I want to take. I do think this game stays competitive. So a little more inclined towards the starters on the Lakers. Again, looking at the Spurs, Bryn Forbes, tournaments, but certainly a place you can go. DeMar DeRozan, underpriced on FanDuel, where he's 8,100. DK is a few hundred more. He's 85, 86, 87. I can't remember exactly, but fine spot for him. Really hard to get away on FanDuel. Certainly fine to play on DK. Don't have a problem with you playing him and Aldridge. This one of the few matchups where I would slightly prefer DeRozan, especially with now we expect KCP to come off the bench. You can certainly Rudy Gay in tournaments. He has 40-point upside in there and has been pretty consistently getting to something fairly close to value. I have no idea what happened with the rankings. I'm simply going to punt on that for the moment, but I am going to the questions on the Slack chat. Cunningham and Bertans starting. Come again? Cunningham, I expected. He started the last game. Cunningham and Bertans starting. Who's not starting? They're starting DeRozan at the point, or is Rudy Gay not starting? Okay, well, we'll wait on a Spurs lineup for a second, and I'll respond as soon as we see it, but I'd like a full Spurs lineup. Kyle Anderson or Kanan in your DK utility or in DK cash. I would play Kyle Anderson in both cash and tournaments pretty convincingly. Rudy Gay not starting. There's your answer there. Don't play Rudy Gay because I don't know what's going on there until we get some specific news. Don't play Davis Bertans because I think the most likely minutes total for him is around 14. Another upgrade, by the way, for DeRozan and Aldridge because Gay does take some number of shots that will now flow to them. Dante Cunningham in the low threes, a perfectly reasonable punt. He started in this game last time. I want to say played 28 minutes and gave you 25 fantasy points. Perfectly reasonable place to go. The Spurs will start Forbes, DeRozan, Cunningham, Bertans, and Aldridge at center. Interesting. If you see specific news that says, hey, we're playing Rudy Gay off the bench, so he had some punch to the second unit or some shit, I'd have a lot of interest in Rudy Gay, but I would need that specific information to be willing to go there. So again, Cunningham, perfectly reasonable punt. Forbes, a little better of a punt, actually, when you take Gay out of the starting unit. DeRozan and Aldridge, again, should be swallowing other people whole. 106 Twitter notifications. Thanks, guys. Taking it easy there. Boom, boom, boom. Randall and Korver. I'll take the side not with Korver. Randall and Korver or Nance and Kojo on DK. Got Randall and anyone else? Like, I'm trying to remember what Kojo... Like, you can't Randall and anyone else because Randall clearly the best player there. Like, Nance and Kojo. I will take Nance and Kojo because I'm not playing Kyle Korver. There's a non-zero chance Kyle Korver doesn't play or plays 8 minutes or something. Not likely, but possible. Like, they've had the veterans in and out of that lineup. Bledsoe or Drew for a GPP on DK, no Giannis in lineup. I'm fine with going Bledsoe there. You're pivoting off a very highly owned Drew Holiday, and that could certainly work for you. Crowder, Temple, Moore, or Carter for utility on DraftKings. I'll take Etuan Moore at this point. Nance on cash and DK. Certainly not for me. Let's see. Kojo or Temple. I'll play Temple if I have to play one of those guys. Yeah, I'll play Temple there. Starting lineup again. Randall and Korver, we've asked and answered. Rondo, Lonzo, or Dragic for a DK GPP. Not Rondo. They're all priced around 6K, those three guys. It's Lonzo for me, so I don't think, the ownership is that much higher. Dragic wouldn't kill me either. Like, there is an upside to be had there. But for me, I would rank those guys Lonzo, Dragic, Rondo. They will play some Rondo next to Lonzo. And sure, it could happen where there's foul trouble, but you're asking for a lot for that to work out. Batum or Josh Jackson, DK, Cash. Cash? It feels dirty, but I'm going to take Josh Jackson. Like, there's some real, questionable offensive players going to be out there with him. He never met a shot he didn't like. You have to guess he's over under 22 shots tonight or something. Favorite plays in DK Cash. Off the top of my head, JaVale McGee. Hassan Whiteside. I think a lot of my lineups would be McGee, Whiteside, center. Randall, probably at 5,900. Drew Holiday. Kemba Walker. A lot of mid-priced guys there, but yeah, that's those would be the guys I'd be most inclined towards there. QQ favorite DK point per dollar shooting guard, Drew Holiday. Going through all the guys in my head real quick. Value guys. Yeah, Drew Holiday. Covington or Moore. I'll play Etuan Moore at that point. Plus, you're saving some significant amount of money against Covington. So, when you pick up more shot projection to that point, he's not quite the defensive player and can't do everything that covers can there. But Trey and Jesus Christ, they're coming in too fast for me to read the notifications. We'll pivot down here. Trey and Henson or Rubio and Saric for a FanDuel GPP. I like both of those things. I didn't mention Henson specifically, but with his price still 37, 38, whatever he is, he seems to have locked down a 16, 18, 20-minute role there, and he's a real fantasy producer in time, and I like that matchup for him. So I will barely say Rubio and Saric for what is some nicer ownership and hopeful Embiid upside, etc. But that's very, very close for me. Payne or Josh Jackson in cash. There, I'm probably going to play Cameron Payne. Cash point guards on FanDuel. Trae Young would certainly be in play. Kemba Walker would certainly be in play. There's no one who predominantly jumps out as a monster. Most of the guys are priced fairly reasonably. So Trae Young, just for the matchup. Darren Collison as a value shot. Yeah, among those guys. The other guys all have a ceiling. Ben Simmons would not bother me at all. So Simmons, Walker, Trae, Collison, I think are around the spots that I'd be trying to jump up and down on. Yeah. Getting in some more questions as they come in. All right, I'm about to go over and check the YouTube for questions. There's a lot of let me check some of the private messages. Hood versus Temple for cash. Yeah, I think I like Temple a little more than Hood. There's some uncertainty with both of those players, but I do think that is the correct way to point your thing. Let us go back and look again. Yeah, I apologize for the projections. Again, I've done shows 6 or 7 days a week, and this is now twice that there haven't been projections, which bothers me quite a bit. I'm attempting to grab all the heads up, but being by myself and having to come up with a new backdrop and everything was more than I could bear. I only had about 3.5 hours to get value today, and sacrifices had to be made. Thoughts on Monk? I think Monk is absolutely fine to play in a tournament. You get 1 time, you get 2 time. Like him a little more if you think you're going to randomly pick up a blowout. So I would, some obvious negative correlation with, say, Kemba, but certainly in play. Horford starting versus Drummond. Yikes, yeah, Horford had to start. Baines is out. You can't start Tice, and even if you did, Tice isn't going to do any better. So, yeah, Drummond. Best combo for DKT. I don't know what T means. I'll say tournament. Batum and Kyle Anderson or Drew Holiday and Hutchinson. I'll take Batum and Kyle Anderson for me. They both have a real upside. Hutchinson, I just don't think you see throw out a 30 fantasy point game like ever. And I think you can randomly get 40 out of Kyle Anderson in the best spot ever. And I think, Batum would not be shocked. He's had 35 twice this year, and the matchup is stellar. So I will take the former of those. Decker and Drummond or Bledsoe and McGee. I got to play Bledsoe and McGee. Well, no, I would actually play Decker and Drummond in both. Decker's getting the start. I think we can think he gets some real time. Now, Decker, we don't have Embiid news yet. That's a 7:30 game, 31 minutes out. DK Cash, Payne and Levine, or Bazemore and Trey. Cash, doesn't really matter whether or not you're stacking the other side in tournaments. You'd want to look at the one that has some of the players going contrary against them there. How many minutes for D. Graham with Tony Parker? I did a projection that had him around 16, which it isn't super exciting. I don't think you need to go there. I'd be more inclined towards Monk, which we're talking about. Bledsoe and Randall or Peyton on DK. It's just one of those guys. Randall for me. I'd probably say Randall. I'd probably say Randall, Bledsoe, Peyton if you don't have Giannis would be my ranking of those guys. And we are about 30 seconds to go here. Still no Joel Embiid news. Checking my updates. Thanks to everyone providing news in the Slack, especially when I'm on here alone. You guys make this much more possible, and it is greatly appreciated. I don't even, cannot deal with Twitter at the moment. Coming down to it, looking for news. Pistons starting who we thought. Celtics starting who we thought. Bullock in, which I expected. Yeah, nothing else to take advantage of there as we come up to lock. There it is. I'll get some quick ownership on those 2 7 p.m. games, if I can. I have no idea if this account has an entry. I think we'll get some pretty stellar 35% ownership, 40% ownership on Drew Holiday, and probably a pretty significant amount of Randall as well. Yes, T was for tournament. Figured that out all by my lonesome. So the big tournament on DK is the 450K excellent eights. Gotta wonder at what point it's worth bumping that up to 500K, just because it's a much more marketable number. But let's see. Not allowing me to get the ownership just yet, so I will grab the ownership, and then for anyone who's been tweeting me in the last hour, I apologize. There was a massive number of things coming in. I will figure out what was, there we go, now we can get to the ownership. I will figure out what was going on. Let's see. Well, the lineup this guy has is 33% Drew Holiday, 31% Julius Randle. Pretty happy about those. If they can keep that game close, you would think those guys can justify those prices. I imagine there are a couple of the higher owned guys. They are the 2 highest owned players in the 7 p.m. games. Oh boy, this Andre Drummond ownership is stellar. Yet again, he was 12% last time. He was in a really amazing spot and put up his 50 burger. This time, 11%. But from the top, you have Drew Holiday, a 33. Julius Randle, 31. Nikola Mirotic, 18.5. Andre Drummond, 11. Blake, 11. Slightly less 11. Andre, 11.12. Blake Griffin, 10.99. Elfrid Payton, 8.6. Got to be happy about that. Daddy-like. Marcus Morris, 8%. Daddy-like. Donovan Mitchell, 7.4%. So here's what I was saying with the Jazz ownership. Jiminy Christmas. Donovan Mitchell, 7.4. Ricky Rubio, 6.96. Al Horford, 5.72. Jason Tatum, 4.89. Rudy Gobert, 4.2%. Kyrie Irving, 4%. Reggie Jackson, 3.8%. Etuan Moore, 3.33%. Like that. Jingles, 3.2%. Daddy-like. Jay Crowder, 3%. Reggie Bullock, 1.7. Ish Smith, 1.5. Jaylen Brown, 1.3. Anthony Davis, 1.14. Congratulations. You played yourself. Yes, I apologize. I'm getting some serious flack on the rankings, and honestly, that's my fault. I started looking at stuff around 3 and locked in with sitting in my computer for just over 2.5 hours now, and had to set up this new wonderful backdrop you see around my beautiful visage here on the YouTube, which took some extra time. I did answer every single personal question I got during the show. In the private Slack, which hopefully helped, and did not read any of those. I read only the public questions, but yeah, my apologies. It is my goal to do those every day. Again, you still had Osmo's rankings, you still had, I believe, Josh's rankings and Adam rankings and several other articles. So there was some premium content exclusive, but I will endeavor to get mine up at least 6 days a week and stop trying to change things in the middle. It's tough because if I had put them up, before the Anthony Davis news and before this, I don't have time to fix them. So then the people who are looking at them, and we have some members who just look at those rankings and extrapolate lineups from that, if I don't have time to update them because I'm hosting the show by myself, then those people get proper fucked. So I would almost rather not provide distortive information because, yes, hopefully I gave some insight by typing the questions and by answering the questions, but I would feel really bad if even like 2 people were like, oh, I looked at your rankings and they still had Anthony Davis as an AA, so I put him in 40% of my lineups, and now I've really buggered that guy. So that is his responsibility too, but I will try to set aside even more time going forward. So, Depot Cunningham or Trey Anderson in cash. Can you say your favorite DK value? Yeah, this is past 7. I will keep this going for a little bit here, especially for the people who are asking. So, again, JaVale McGee represents, value to me. It's just worth mentioning at that point. But I don't mind Cunningham. I don't mind Decker. I like Kyle Anderson a lot. I believe in the matchup. I believe in the talent long term. And, 28 minutes last game, I think that maybe even comes up a little bit here. But I like Kyle Anderson quite a bit. Can I update the rankings for 7:30? That's a reasonable request. I will do that. I will get off the air in 1 minute. Figure out what the hell went wrong with the rankings. Delete the 4 teams that are no longer relevant. And so everyone has that for the late slates, because there are, of course, several late slates tonight. So that's an excellent suggestion, and I will absolutely do that. So we'll be off the air at 7:10. Figure out what the hell went wrong there and update that. Decker for cash. I don't have a problem with Decker for cash. He is $3,100. He is not dissimilar from Mitchell Robinson in cash last night, and he got you 18, which is 6x if you use really shitty math, but still obviously wasn't going to put a hole in the ground, and that would have been enough if you nutted everything else and you were allowed to play some really unique lineup structures because you had a guy who cost so little. So Decker 3,100 works in cash or tournaments for me. Again, he did not play yesterday. And again, one of the reasons I'm really not confident taking any of the Cavs is the fact that they completely fucked their lineup yesterday, and now they're starting a guy who didn't even play yesterday. I don't like to pretend to know when I don't know, and I don't really know what the hell is going to happen there. So I have some very real concern. That being said, let me, Cunningham at 3,500 is in a stellar matchup. I probably prefer him a little bit to Decker at 3,100. I will scroll through and see if there's any other value I want to talk about real quick before bailing and getting those projections set up for the guys in premium, and then I will make sure I am available for questions for quite some time until I'm given the sweet release of either sleep or death. I can ignore these guys with the Locky sign. You know what? I'm just going to skip past 3,000. 3,000 tends to be a really interesting spot. Check Diallo without Anthony Davis would have been fine in tournaments. Yes, that is a fair point. And now that we knew he was out, Again, Sam Decker we have spoken about at 3,100. No, that is not Mason Plumlee. That is a different Plumlee. Do not play that Plumlee. Do not play Robin Lopez even at 3,200. He has been out of the rotation. You can tournament Blakeney, but again, you need the minutes to go a different way than they have. Yesterday got 22. The day before that got 9. So you're going to be, hoping that he gets that bench usage. But at 3,200, he is a guy who can easily score 30 fantasy points. He's done so repeatedly in the preseason, and they can let him get some runs. So don't hate that whatsoever. Nope. Don't play him. Nope. Muscala, again, we're waiting on Embiid news. I don't think we have it yet. Updating. All the Heat guys are playing. Not surprising, and makes them all worse. Let's see. Looking at a couple other value guys, sticking with DK for the moment. I don't mind Fellatio. A little Fellatio in my evening always makes me happy. So, Cristiano, 30 minutes last night. I really think that number comes down, and I would rather play Carter, but $3,300 is cheap enough if you randomly threw him in a tournament lineup. I wouldn't despise it, but you're probably asking for trouble there. You can play Kyle Korver in tournaments if you want. I'm not. I really think you're pushing your luck there, but obviously it can happen. Archie Diacono, got that name on the lockdown now, 3,400. Has had a consistent role, 17 to 28 minutes over the last 4 games. And again, we really like this spot. So yeah, he makes some sense in tournaments. He's down the list. I'd probably barely rather play Hutchinson at the same price. But you're asking for some trouble there. Basically the same deal when you look at Dante DiVincenzo. Literally has exactly 19 or 20 minutes every game. You can certainly think you get a blowout in that game. I think Milwaukee at home is favored by like 10. Maybe pick up a couple extra minutes that way. Big ass slate, you can throw him in there, but you're probably asking for trouble. Mo Harkless, same thing. A little too cheap if we think his minutes eventually pick up and get him beyond, playing 20 minutes. Pretty similar situation for him as well. Davis Bertans would be in play in this matchup in tournaments at 3,600. Yes, I'd rather play Dante Cunningham, as mentioned, for a little cheaper and a little more guaranteed time. And has shown he can do it in this matchup recently. Hernan Gomez, you'd have to really, really want it. Last game, he was into the single digits. They're spending a lot of time with Michael Kidd-Gilchrist at center. So, but Embiid plays and foul trouble or massive blowout by Philadelphia or by Charlotte somehow. I guess you could put in a tournament. You would have to really want it. Monk or Joseph on DK? That's a good question. I will take Monk with Tony Parker kicking up his heels and taking a rest there. John Henson I like quite a bit still at 3,700. That's a nice piece of value. KCP at 3,800 would be in play for me in a fast-paced game where he could get some real run off the bench. I would prefer to play Michael Kidd-Gilchrist at 3,800, who's getting time at the 3, 4, 5 basically, and has some sort of upside. If Embiid is out, I think TJ McConnell becomes a little more in play. Zach Collins is obviously very much in play. Just tournaments, that's not going to be a consistent role. Colin Sexton, I'd rather play Zach Collins to rank those guys. Evan Turner, I would probably play a little less ordinarily than Zach Collins, but I like them both. Kojo of those guys would be the one that I would play in cash. Garrett Temple I would also consider as an interesting cash punt and playable in tournaments. Terrence Ross only in tournaments. Etuan Moore cash or tournaments, but he's already started, so that seems kind of useless. Wendell Carter, obviously cash or tournaments. We liked him quite a bit. Rodney Hood in tournaments. Fultz in tournaments at 4,400. Again, a boost if you find Embiid out there, but I would much rather find a way to pay up for J.J. Redick. DJ Augustine, sort of a cash punt, but the matchup's pretty dreadful. George Hill makes sense in tournaments. Justin Holiday, cash or tournaments. Kyle Anderson, cash or tournaments. Probably rather tournaments, but I am a believer, and that takes us up to $4,500. Depot or Kemba? I will take Kemba in cash and Depot in tournaments in that pairing. That makes it 7-10. I'm going to slip on out of here, update those rankings for our premium members, get those uploaded in the next 5 minutes or so that they can take a look at those. Again, if you haven't signed up for the awesomeness that is Awesemo, you should do it because it's fun and you get to see a little more of me. Maybe there'll be shows behind the paywall someday. That would make the subs very happy and decrease the number of De Niro Clinton-esque bombs arriving at my house weekly. That said, I am Fast Eddie Fear. I will be gone tomorrow, taking my 1 day off week. I will be back Monday with bells on. That said, best of luck in your contest tonight. Tweet me those big winners, and good luck.